Hello and welcome, everyone, to Good Old Rocky Talk, a Vol Society podcast. I'm your host, Brad, here with my partners, the Davids. We're glad you're listening wherever you are. This is Good Old Rocky Talk. Welcome back to episode 3 of Good Old Rocky Talk, everyone. I'm your host, Brad Frank, along with my partners, David Dees and David Morrison, as usual. Guys, how we doing?
Doing great, Brad. Glad to be alive.
Good evening, Brad. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad for a Monday night. Not too bad. I've been better. But at the end of the day, I look at myself and I say, hey, we're 2-0. And that's all that matters. Right?
That's right.
All right. Well, listen, guys, we got a lot to talk about tonight. You're probably guessing why I'm saying I've been better. And we're going to dig deep into that in our first segment. So, hey, why don't we just get started with our first segment? Does that sound good to you guys? Let's do it. Recapping the Tennessee Austin Peay game. Wow. Well, if you joined us last week on the podcast, we I don't think any of us could have predicted how that game would have played out. Ended up playing out, but I think we all agreed in our predictions last week that the score would be something along the lines of 50 or 60 to 0 or 66 to 7 or something along those lines. But boy, that didn't turn out that way. We did get the win, 30 to 13, but my goodness, what a weird, is it just me or was it a weird night of football for Tennessee?
It was basically bizarro world, kind of the whole game for the most part. And being up there Saturday, I mean, the first half, Tennessee just, kind of looked sluggish offensively. If not kind of, they did look sluggish offensively, possibly mainly from the quarterback position of Joe Milton. I know you're about.
Well, and not to interrupt you, Morrison, but yeah, you were at the game.
Mm-hmm.
And let's start before the game even happened. Like, you have a weather this is how weird Saturday was. You have a weather delay. That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then when the game's ready, when we're ready to get things rolling again, you don't even, from what I understand, am I right on this? You don't even have the Vols run out of the power tee. That doesn't happen, does it?
No. Very rare. I remember going up there one time for a weather delay. I think it was like ETSU a few years ago. They ran out of the tunnel, but there was no power tee. They just kind of just went to the sidelines and did the coin flip and game on. But yeah, just I mean, if you kind of followed along college football throughout the whole weekend, usually this is the time of the year where it's hurricane season, even though we haven't had a hurricane, but you have a lot of just kind of that nasty weather across the southeast, and a lot of games got pushed back and delayed. And Tennessee was a part of that. Thankfully, it was only a 30-minute delay, and not longer. But yeah, it ruined kind of the whole flow because I went up there, around 2 o'clock, taking in the ball walk and doing some ball society stuff and meeting with Eric Ainge. And just it was a very hot day, kind of the last days of summer, dog days of summer, if you will. And then right around 4:30, you started seeing the clouds come in, and you started hearing rumors that this game may be delayed and all that. And I'm already in the stadium, settled in, and I will also say there's a lot of construction going on at Neyland Stadium, I mean, obviously. So if you're planning on going to a game, it was kind of hectic getting into the stadium, with some construction going on and kind of maneuvering people into different gates and maneuvering around. So be patient to try to get into Neyland Stadium this year.
Yeah.
But anyways, jumping back to when I'm already in the stadium, um, you see some dark, spooky clouds just kind of above, but it's not raining. But they're already displaying on the scoreboard. Severe weather is threatening the area, and then we get an announcement that the game has been postponed to 5/17. That's when I went ahead and text you from the stadium. By the way, also positive thing, the Wi-Fi at Neyland Stadium is great. There is great Wi-Fi in there now. I
That's
was
good.
messaging and texting people
I heard
throughout
about
the
that.
game.
They updated the Wi-Fi there. I heard. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
yeah, they did.
That's good.
So it's really great.
Well, I know it's
mean,
working good because I was texting you and a few other people who were at the game. Hey, and you guys were actually getting the text and responding back quickly. So I knew something was going well.
Yeah, kudos to Danny White and that entire whoever else was in charge of it, IT people.
It's
It's
good.
For having 100,000 people and still getting some good Wi-Fi service and texts and stuff. That's kudos to them.
Well, was there a sign on the billboard when it said, it talked about that severe weather threatening the area? Did it also say severe weather will be threatening the way our athletes play the game tonight?
It did not say that.
Because it should have. It should have.
Yeah, I know it. God did not provide that message to the faithful at Neyland Stadium. He knew, but we didn't know.
Oh, he knew all right.
Yeah.
Guys, let's just go into it. Here's what I want to do. I want to read off a few key total stats for that game this past Saturday. And then, Morrison, you can go through afterwards and talk about individual stats if you want. Highlight Milton, or whatever, the running backs, how they did, whatever you want to talk about, defense, tackles, all that good stuff. But I want to go through some interesting things. Surely, if you're listening to this, you saw the game, but if you didn't, or even if you did, let this sink in for a minute. Number one, first of all, keep in mind, this is Austin Peay. A scrimmage. Should have been a scrimmage. Total yards, let's go there. Total yards that game. Austin Peay, 339 yards. Volunteers, 456. So we had more than them, which is good. Okay, great. Not much more, but we did. I'm going to save the best for last. Rushing yards, Austin Peay, 79 total yards. Vols, 228. Hey, that's good. I have no problem with that. Now it's going to start getting interesting. First downs, Austin Peay, I think 19. Tennessee, 17. Interesting. Penalties, Austin Peay 9, Vols 10. And by the way, I will say those refs were a total disgrace Saturday night. I'm sorry, but they were. They were. Now, let me go real quick to this last one. This is going to tell you, this is going to sound crazy, especially given Heupel's kind of offense. Let's go to passing yards. Austin Peay, 260 total yards passing. 260. Volunteers, 228. Austin Peay had more than us. Woo! That is fantastic. So that's going to give you, listen, bottom line is, I'm going to tell you this, and then Morrison, you can take it from there and go through some of the highlight stats. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I love my Vols, but by God, we played awful, period. Okay? Morrison, you can share the individual stats, but listen, this can't happen again.
No, it cannot. The first half was just a struggle to get really any points at all. I mean, it was trading field goals really early on. But the big headline coming out is Joe Milton's inconsistency in the first quarter. Just some heaters he was throwing at our wide receivers that they just couldn't catch, either it's too high or bouncing off their hands. And there was even a couple of catches that our receivers had to go low and get. I mean, it was just not great.
Listen, Joe Milton at times was the Joe of old, throwing balls all over the place, over people's heads, also behind them. Now, I will say, and we'll talk about this later, some of those wide receivers, which is a little alarming, they should have caught. So there's something
Yeah.
going on with that chemistry that we can discuss later. But listen, I'll let that game slide. But if that Joe this past Saturday shows up at Florida, hey, we're gonna have to have a serious talk about him. I I love Joe Milton. I'm not I'm not trying to criticize him. I'm stating facts. It's not all his fault. As I said, I'm concerned with some of our wide receivers dropping the balls as well. I'm not sure why this is happening. And a part of me is wondering if maybe it has something to do with how Joe's throwing the ball. Maybe he's throwing it too hard to the. I don't know. But we must clean that up. Dees, what do you think, Dees? I mean, am I overboard here, David Dees? Come on, talk to me.
No, you're not overboard. You're just giving an honest reaction. I think most Vol fans probably felt the way that you feel. If you had to search this game for positives, I thought the defense played with some intensity for the majority of the game. It
Sure.
looked good. I think Austin P threw the kitchen sink at us. There were multiple flea flickers and just kind of weird stuff. Even the way they lined up, they come in a stack set and then spread everybody out. They just do a lot of stuff that you're probably not going to see most weeks. It's a lot of unorthodox.
That's true.
Offense. And then on defense, they threw a lot of all-out blitzes at us. They called timeouts at weird spots. It was just kind of a screwy game. Which is sometimes when you play a school like Austin P, a 1AA or a FCS school, you can kind of see that kind of stuff happen.
Yeah.
You saw how much it meant to their coach and how much it meant to their players. It was their Super Bowl.
Oh.
And that's not to minimize what they've done. I think they played really well and absolutely did the best they could. I think they should be proud of themselves in the way they came in and played at Neyland Stadium. But from a Tennessee perspective, bottom lines, the offense has got to be better. The passing game's got to be better. And I think that starts with Joe Milton and then also receivers catching the ball and then O-line protecting. I didn't think Joe made any terrible decisions necessarily. It was just inaccurate balls.
Agree.
And I don't know if it's a mechanics thing. I don't know if it's a timing thing. I don't know what it is, but something didn't look right for a lot of that game. And I credit Josh Heupel for giving him some easier throws to kind of get him in a rhythm after he struggled so badly. I think he was 1 of 8 to start the game, and then he completed his next, several consecutive passes in a row. And it's because they simplified things and made it a little bit easier. Now, you're not going to go out and be able to beat Florida or beat Alabama playing that way, but at least it got him settled in. I'd like to see them do that this next week, get him settled in sooner, give him some easier throws to make. But, this guy's got to catch the ball. I thought we left a lot of points out there. And it's easy to point at Joe Milton, and we should, but also, those wide receivers and even Jabari Small in a play. I think he would have scored a touchdown. He dropped a screen pass, had nobody in front of him, just not helping him out, not doing him any favors. So rough game, ugly game. It's one I'm choosing to just kind of erase from my memory bank and move on and say that was just a one-off. It's the worst performance of offense in the Josh Heupel era. So I'm just going to forget about it and say it was an anomaly. But let's see how things look down in Gainesville this week and go.
Well, I'll tell you this. You're going to know what this team's all about this Saturday. I agree. We're going to let that game slide. As Morrison would say, we'll give it a mulligan there. We'll just we'll let it slide. But I'm going to tell you right now, buddy, you're not going to get away with that stuff starting now. Okay? It's not going to happen.
We're not asking Joe Milton to be excellent.
No.
We're asking him to just be solid and serviceable. Go out and throw accurate
key word
balls.
You just said, serviceable. That's all we need from Joe. We do that, we're fine. We're fine.
And one more point, Brad, kind of taking the heat off of Joe Milton a little bit. I noticed, like, on the defensive side, like, middle linebackers seem to be off quite a bit throughout the game. I noticed a lot of slants going over the middle.
Yeah.
Missing Keenan Peely.
That hurt.
That really hurts. I mean, Aaron Beasley played his tail off. I mean, he led the team in tackles. He was all over the place. He was lined up at linebacker.
Aaron Beasley,
corner,
shout
safety.
out. Shout out to Beasley.
He is
8 tackles, 2 sacks. Come on. Shout out to Beasley. He's
going to be an All-American. If he stays healthy and stays consistent, he's going to be an All-American at the end of the year. But, Tennessee they started Elijah Herring at middle linebacker. Then they swapped out with Arian Carter. Both of those guys look okay at times. Then they put Jack Janzik in there, and I'm afraid Jack had too much pressure on him.
Yeah.
Kind of the big lights shine really bright, and he got exposed quite a bit. So middle linebacker is going to be interesting to see how it's going to transition with Peely out for who knows how long. And then going back, kind of continuing injuries going on the offensive side, Cooper Mays uh, supposedly be back. Josh Heupel kind of teased it a little bit. Of course, he's very cryptic in his press conferences with stuff like that.
He doesn't let a lot of stuff fly. I don't know if he's going to be back or not. He did kind.
Okay.
We're not going to say he's going to be back because Heupel did not say that. But it's possible. He did tease a little bit, but we don't know. The truth is, we don't know. You know. But to your point, Morrison, about the defense, in terms of defense, at this point, I'm still impressed with what I'm seeing out there on defense. Much better than last year, which is what you want to see. I already talked about Beasley. He had a great game. Overall, yeah, were they perfect on defense? No, they weren't perfect. But I'm liking what our defense is doing. I see what they're capable of, and they're certainly improved over last year. I never thought I would say this. You know, the defense, I feel pretty strong about it. It's the offense this year that I'm having a hard time with these first two games. I'm just struggling. And like I said, we're going to find out all we need to know this Saturday. I can tell you that much.
Well, it's just a wasted opportunity to get backups in the game and to build some depth and some confidence in those guys. We all said last week on the podcast, we said, you know, Nico's going to come in and get a whole second half, and you're going to get a lot of young offensive and defensive linemen out there, and the young defensive backs are going to get to
None
play.
of that happened.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't set ourselves up in a position to do that. So it from that standpoint, that feels like a pretty big blow to the season, because there's not going to be many more opportunities on the schedule for those guys to get real game time experience.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Do you guys have anything else you want to say about Austin Peay? I'm kind of just getting depressed here. I want to let that topic go so we can move on. But if you got anything else, let me know, guys.
I'll just say Joe Milton was not the worst quarterback in the state of Tennessee. Look at Ryan Tannehill yesterday.
Yeah.
So that
there you go.
And I can say that as a Titans fan.
There you go. You can say that. You're allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny.
Don't feel bad, Vol fans. You could have Ryan Tannehill playing.
There you go. There you go.
And that's all I got to say about that.
Awesome. Hey, let's go to our next segment, guys. What did we learn this past week in college football? Boy, I tell you, college football is awesome, isn't it? You learn something every week, something new, something you're not expecting. It's just really cool stuff. Hey, the only thing I really want to hint on, and then you guys go ahead. The only thing I want to talk about, just because we are in the SEC, is I think overall after these first couple of weeks, I think the SEC's down this year. I think we're down. You know, you got Alabama. They lose to Texas 34-24. You got Kentucky, who barely beats.
Can I just say this? We're 2-0 and they're 1-1. So we can sit here and complain and be sad all we want. Tennessee's 2-0 and Alabama's 1-1.
They're ranked better than us. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? That's why these rankings are a total joke. A total joke. Total joke. Back to my point. You got Kentucky, who barely beats Eastern Kentucky. Did you see that? They barely won. What was that? I think 28-17. You got Texas A&M. They get beat by Miami 48-33. Missouri barely beats an MTSU 23-19. And remember last week, guys, Florida gets beat by Utah. South Carolina got beat. I mean, you see all these SEC teams losing. So,
well, as we said coming into the year, a lot of these teams are replacing quarterbacks. They have brand new quarterbacks, a lot of unanswered questions, and the transfer portal. South Carolina took a huge hit in the transfer portal, lost a lot of guys. It's going to be consistently harder and harder for teams to stay consistent year in and year out because of transfer portal and because of the quarterback situation, especially because most of these schools don't have a Nico sitting on their bench as a second string quarterback. If you're a second string quarterback in most cases, you're going on and playing somewhere else.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. So, again, at the end of the day, it appears the SEC is somewhat down this year. Hey, which should bode well for us if we can fix this crap that we had going on this past Saturday night against Austin P. Right? I mean, come on. So that's what I learned last week. Who wants to go next? Morrison, hit me up, man. What'd you learn last week?
Um, what I learned that Texas may be back. I mean, we talked about Alabama losing, but I tell you what, I think Texas could end up having the same season we had last year. They got a big momentum win on the road at Alabama. The Big 12 is pretty favorable. I mean, I know they've changed the scheduling around. I know they still got to play Oklahoma down in Dallas. That's probably going to be their next big game. I know they got Baylor in a couple of weeks, who's winless themselves. But I think Texas could be a serious contender this year. Um, Colorado 2-0. Dion, they beat Nebraska. Probably like struggled a little bit in the first half with them, but then they
Coach
really poured it on.
Prime.
Coach Prime and the Buffs.
Hey, let me give you one more.
Getting a big
Let me
game.
give you one more,
Yeah,
Morrison. Hey, don't sleep on Notre Dame, buddy.
yeah.
Hey, that team,
hmm
they look pretty good, buddy. That's another one to keep your eye on.
I mean, and it's fun. I know you were talking about the polls, and they're kind of it is a joke, and I get it, but it's almost funny. Like the top 15 poll kind of looks like a AP poll from the 90s, except I guess Georgia would play the Nebraska role. I mean,
Oh,
and we're right there in
Nebraska.
the thick of it. So
Poor Nebraska. Oh, my God. Yikes.
our Big Ten brothers, but
Yikes.
they're in
I
a
mean,
lot worse shape than us.
do you remember a time back in the day, Nebraska, man, you didn't want to play those guys. Oh,
No,
bless their hearts. I mean, we've been there. We've been there. I'm not going to say anything bad. We've been there. Go ahead, Morrison.
no. I mean, like I said, Texas looked really great after the 2 weeks. Colorado's looking good. They get Colorado State on Saturday. Just kind of observing. Like I said, it was just kind of that wacky weather delay, just delaying games. I mean, Purdue and Virginia Tech scheduled to, or they kicked off at 12 o'clock. They played, I think, a half, a first, a quarter. Then they had a big time lengthy weather delay that didn't get started till 6 o'clock later on that evening. Notre Dame, NC State. Um, can't believe it. Like the last two times Notre Dame's went to Raleigh, the first time they played in a hurricane a few years ago, and then they go back and play in another weather delay game. So I don't know if they're going to go back to Raleigh anytime soon.
Let's not leave
September.
this out. I think it's safe to say Dabo and the Clemson. Clemson. I think that dynasty's back, baby. After this past Saturday's win.
Oh yeah, over the Buccaneers of Charleston Southern.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're back. They're back.
they are. Cade Klubnik for Heisman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, it was just just kind of like I said, just that. And I was listening to Josh Pate, one of my favorite college football uh, commentators, and he always brings up this point. And I tend to agree. He's like the teams that you see struggling in September. Wait till you get to November; they're going to look like a completely different team. And I guess we would throw ourselves in that boat. Hopefully, we would look a lot different in November than we did in September. And I know he's mentioned Ohio State. He expected them to struggle in September, but really get going by November. So I know that's still 2 months away, and we're here in the present. But I guess some optimism if you're a team that's kind of struggling offensively or kind of scratching your head right now, kind of we are. Hopefully, you get it cleaned up early on, and then by the time November rolls around, be like, oh yeah, we did struggle against Austin Peay, and well, look at us now. So.
Yeah. Hey, how good is USC this year, guys? What are your thoughts? Are they great?
They'll be sniffing a playoff spot. I
Okay.
think they're going to, the Pac-12 is very competitive this year. They've got some really good football teams, and I think it's going to be tough for anybody to just kind of run their way through it. But you got Caleb Williams in a pretty high-powered offense, so we'll see. I don't know if their defense is quite good enough to get them there, though. I think they'll stub their toe once or twice.
Yeah, they got a couple of big time games. I know they got to go to Notre Dame this year. That could be a top.
That'll be
top
a good
10.
game.
That'd be a great game in South Bend. I think it's in prime time, and then Washington and Oregon going to be fairly competitive too, along with USC and even Utah. So
Okay.
I mean, it's
Don't sleep on Oregon State
No.
either.
and yeah, Oregon State.
No.
I mean, it's so sad what's going to happen to the Pac-12 next year. And I know here in the South we don't watch a lot of Pac-12 games, but as a college football fan, it's sad to see how that conference is just going to basically be down to two teams. And
No, it's
you know,
done. It's done.
yeah,
It's awful.
yeah, and you know,
They probably got one of the best leagues this year from top to bottom.
yeah.
They're very deep.
Yeah.
yeah, they just
It's
had
sad.
they just had some terrible leadership the last few years, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, where they're at in the TV deals,
Yeah.
they don't have the best TV contracts, and just the times they play that they're going up against some big time games. And like I said, even going back to the old Pac-10 days, I mean, there were some great games and great teams back in the day. Even us in high school with that Pete Carroll USC run.
Oh yeah. D's, what'd you learn? Anything?
I enjoyed. I got to watch a lot of football this weekend, and I enjoyed it and had a good time. I would say this: there's no one out there that if Tennessee gets competent quarterback play and they can get this passing game fixed, there's nobody out there that just absolutely scares you, and you say you can't play with those guys.
Amen.
I think Georgia's probably on another level still until proven otherwise.
Right.
But other than that, I look across the country and I don't see anybody that I don't feel like Tennessee could play with if they get good quarterback play. I think that Tennessee team last year, if you had Hendon Hooker back, you'd probably be one of the favorites to make the playoff this year. So I just think we're close, and I think that's all the reason to have that we're anxiously awaiting to see what materializes here on the offensive side of the ball, because I think Tennessee's not far away if they can get competent quarterback play.
That's interesting. Yeah. Let's go to our next segment, guys. One of my favorites, mailbag. Let's go to the mailbag, the Vol Society mailbag. Hey, we thank you guys so much for sending us your questions. Again, if you're listening to this, this is a part of our Vol Society Facebook page. We're all over social media. Facebook, we're growing. We're over 42,000 loyal followers. That's where we get most of our questions from. So check us out on Facebook. Give us a follow, and we'd love to have you there. All right, let's go to our first question from Terry, who is from Tullahoma, Tennessee. Let's go. Hey, where's Tullahoma, guys?
It's on the way to Nashville, mid-state.
Mid.
It's correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's the home of the Louisville Slugger factory.
Oh, I think you are right. Interesting. All right, Terry. I hope you're doing well, buddy. All right, so he asked, do you think Coach Heupel will make a QB change this season?
Oh, Terry.
We're 2 games in, and you're already getting this question out to us. Woo! Terry's not wasting any time. Well, Terry, I tell you what, buddy, after this past week, I mean, it's a valid question. Okay. All right. I'll say this. I don't sugarcoat things, guys. I say what's on my mind, what's on my heart. If, and this is a big if, but if Milton continues to have a wild arm, I do think Heupel, well, I think he's going to have no choice. And here's why. Milton has had plenty of time to fix this one issue that he has. Whether it's, I don't know if you want to call it mechanical or what. His arm's just too powerful. But this didn't just happen. He's had a lot of time to work on this. And from what I understand, in the offseason, from many, many coaches and players and different analysts, they say he's looked fantastic in the offseason. No picks, no wild arm. He's just a new man. Well, I hate to break it to you. The past 2 games would suggest otherwise, as he still has some wild throws. Okay? So it appears that it's not been fixed yet. So, again, I said this earlier, and Terry, I hate to say this, buddy, but if you see Milton doing that against Florida, You know what? We're all human. We're going to make mistakes, but if you see that happen consistently in that first half, hey, call me crazy, but I think you might see someone else come in for a little bit, switch it up. I think you have no choice. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I know they don't want to have to make a change. They want Joe to be the guy. They need Joe to
Oh,
be the
sure.
guy. They don't want to have to play a true. They don't want to play a true freshman in Nico
Sure.
um, until he's ready. It's not that he's not great. I think he's going to be a star at Tennessee. He's a true freshman. I don't think they want to have to go that route if they don't
Yep.
have to, especially this early in the season. But that being said, you get down to Florida and you have multiple 3-and-outs where there's just inerrant throws and just sloppy football on offense, and it's obvious that things aren't going well. I don't know if you're in that position. Do they make a change? Maybe. I don't know. Um, you would sure hate to. I will say this: we all felt like Jeremy Pruitt was guilty of leaving Jarrett Garantano out there way longer than he should have. We were begging for a quarterback change. It was obvious that it just was not working out. And I like Jarrett Garantano as a person. I've met his family; they're great people. It just wasn't working for the kid at quarterback here. And to Jeremy Pruitt's detriment, he left him out there way too long. And I don't think Josh Heupel will make the same mistake. Josh Heupel cares about his points. Josh Heupel wants to score. He wants his offense to be ran a certain way. He has very high standards for how his offense runs and how efficient it is. And I trust that Josh Heupel will make the right decision when the time comes. If he knows that Joe is not going to work out at quarterback long term and it's going to tank our season, I could see him making a change. I'm just going to defer to Josh Heupel on that. I think he'll do it when it needs to be done. And for all of our sakes and for the team's sake, I hope Joe Milton's the guy, and I hope he goes down to Florida and balls out. And this last week was just
Amen.
But as you said, Brad, we've all seen this multiple times out of Joe. And so from a fan's perspective, you can start having that doubt again of, is this guy reverting back to his old ways? Is he the guy we saw against Clemson? Is he a guy we saw against Virginia? Is the guy we saw against Austin Peay? And that was my whole thing at the beginning of the year. Can this guy be consistent week in and week out? I know that Joe can have some really high highs, and I also know that Joe can have some really low lows. Can we get him to somewhere be in the middle consistently? Give me solid. If Joe Milton can give us solid, he can play for as long as he needs to this year. But if you get what you got in the first half against Austin Peay in SEC league play, I don't think Heupel's going to put up with that for very long.
Yeah. Well said. And I think you're right, Dees. A part of my worry and frustration, I need to let that go, is I'm so stuck on that, Jeremy Pruitt era where we knew, JG was not the guy, but yet he stuck with him game after game, year after year. And I have to remember, and we all do, we have to remember this is a different coach, in Josh Heupel, and we have to trust him to know when the right time is.
And he played quarterback at the highest level possible. So he knows this position. He knows what it takes. He knows everything about Joe Milton. He knows about his quarterback room. This is one area where we can just trust Josh Heupel with it. And I know last week would suggest that there's problems, but at the end of the day, we got to pump the brakes and say, this guy, of all people, this guy is going to figure this thing out. So I trust that he will. He's not done anything to suggest otherwise to this point.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Morrison?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and I'll just kind of keep it short and sweet. Josh Heupel knows if a change needs to be made, he'll go ahead and make the change. And I don't know Josh Heupel's emotional status or what he's thinking, but I think if he makes a change the second time to Joe Milton, I think it's really going to hurt his trust and confidence really in him. And I mean, I think he respects him, but it's just like, I had to pull you out in 2021 for Hendon Hooker, and now I got to do it again. It's just it loses that trust, and it's I just that's going to be just very heartbreaking. I think more for Heupel to do if he does make that decision.
But he gets paid the big bucks to make these decisions, and you got to take out. And I get what you're saying, Morrison, But at the end of the day, this guy gets paid millions of dollars. It's a business. I know it's a game,
Yeah.
but it's also a business. And as heartbreaking as it may be, like I am trusting
Well,
Heupel that if Joe's not getting the job done, you've got to make that change.
well, here's the thing: Joe's been given every opportunity to do this.
No question.
Joe's had it all laid out before him, and I like the kid. Everybody
I love
likes
him.
him.
Yeah.
Everybody wants this guy to succeed.
Yeah.
But he's had it all laid out for him. And so there's really no excuse. Either at some point, either you get the job done or you do not. And after 2 weeks in, I hate that we're already having this conversation, but clearly there's a reason behind it. And I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful that he goes down to Florida and just lights it up.
Oh,
And he doesn't even have to do that. Just be
Yep.
solid. Go down there. The good thing about him, he doesn't turn the ball over. Go down there, have a turnover-free game, complete your passes, be accurate, make good decisions, go through your reads, be patient when you need to be patient, make smart decisions,
serviceable, as you
and,
said.
manage the game.
Be serviceable. That's all you need. We don't need him to be perfect. And
No.
we're rooting for him.
And honestly, this Florida team is not your typical Florida
Sure.
team. It's a team that Tennessee, if they play up to their capabilities, should go down there and
Yeah.
win.
You're right.
I hope he does it, guys.
God.
But if
Yeah.
it is what it is. If he plays like he did this last week, we're going to have big problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not just his fault, as we've said. It's the receivers too. It's not just him. There's multiple things involved in this.
Oh, I'm
hate
disappointed.
to be so hard on Joe.
I'm disappointed with our receivers as well. I there's really no excuse to be dropping these passes the way they've been doing it the past couple of games, and I'm really I don't understand why they're dropping them. That's what's concerning me. Is it because Joe's throwing it too hard? Is it they're just not paying attention? Are they looking where they need to run before, as they're catching the ball? There's so many factors that I'm trying to understand, and we have to fix it. We need to just fix these things. It's that simple. All right, guys, we've talked.
I think.
Go ahead.
I just will say this before we go. I think a big difference between this season and last season, our margin for error is much slimmer this year. You could overcome a lot of mistakes last year with Hendon Hooker and the offensive weapons that we had with Tillman and Hyatt and Princeton Fant. You were able to overcome a lot of that. This year, I just think our margin for error on that side of the ball is a lot thinner. And so we got to get more efficient, more consistent in what we're doing. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's go to our next question. That was a great question. That was a great question, Terry. You had us talking there for quite a bit there, going back and forth, so I like it. Let's go to Barry. From Bulls Gap, Tennessee. All right. Where's Bulls Gap, Tennessee, guys?
It's in the Tri-Cities area, I think.
How do you guys know this?
You got me on that one. I don't know.
I Googled it.
Oh, you Googled it. All right. Maybe I should start Googling.
It just said it was like near Johnson City and Kingston in the Tri-Cities area. It's a real small town.
Man, I don't know my state.
We've got a Terry and a Barry. I'm hoping our next question's from a Larry or a Mary. Let's see if we can make that happen.
Ooh, you never know. Barry from Bulls Gap. Thanks for the question. He asked, what were your thoughts on the other QBs in the SEC this week? That's a great question. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I've been talking my ear off tonight, guys. Let's let our fans hear a little bit more from the two Davids. Morrison, you want to go first real quick? What are your thoughts on the other QBs in the SEC this week?
I think you got a lot of quarterbacks that's going through some growing pains. Jalen Milroe's down in Alabama. I mean, he had a solid game against Alabama, even though coming up on the losing end. I think there's still some questions in the quarterback position in Tuscaloosa. Spencer Rattler improved from week 1 to week 2. We'll see if that kind of continues to go for South Carolina.
Not a fan of his, by the way. Sorry, I had to say that.
No, you're fine. It seems like Devin Leary is starting to figure out the Kentucky offense. I know they struggled against Eastern Kentucky it's just just a lot of kind of like growing pains and just kind of getting back into somewhat the swing of things, if you will. But we've talked about earlier in the podcast, there's just not really a big dominant team in college football besides Georgia, and Carson Beck's looking really good. I mean, mainly for his defense side, but it's just a lot of just kind of what if and what we're gonna see. Um, Jaden Daniels didn't have the greatest week one against Florida State. Um, Improved last
You
week,
think that
so
guy's going to
it.
say you're starting quarterback at LSU this year?
That's the rumor. The rumors going around is that Garrett Nussmeier is going to take over here pretty soon if that doesn't get better.
It's interesting. I mean, he's a playmaker. It's just I don't know. It just I think these next once we get rolling to September, started getting into some SEC play. Have we even have an SEC game so far this year? After 2 weeks,
Ooh, good question.
It's a really
I
good
don't think
question.
we've
I don't
had.
think. Hold on.
I don't
Nope,
think so.
I don't think
Yeah.
so. But I tell you
So
what,
our
Unless you go with Alabama, Texas.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That was the only one I was going
Okay.
to say, but
Yeah.
you can't
so
technically.
so this
say
weekend
that.
starts conference play with us in Florida, and then Georgia South Carolina is the CBS game.
Well,
this
and to
week,
your point,
so-
Morrison, now is where you're going to start knowing things. Not
Yeah.
only with our boys, but
Separate
other
contenders
teams.
from pretenders.
You're going to start knowing some things after this weekend. Period. Go ahead, Morrison.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean just kind of wrapping up. Just like I said, once we get into conference plays, and then you really start seeing how these teams do. I mean, and we talked about the SEC's really struggled without Power Five out of conference teams and kind of underperform. But I think this is going to be a pretty entertaining SEC season, and we'll really get to know more about these quarterbacks as they go along, and even for Joe too.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I would say that Milroe is not the long term answer at Alabama. If he stays their starting quarterback, I think it's an 8 or 9 win team. I would say that Spencer Rattler's not a bad quarterback, but he has a horrible offensive line. He's going to really struggle this year. I think he's going to be under pressure the whole season. I think it's a lot of these
if
guys.
not hurt.
I think the offensive lines have not looked great
No
across the
protection.
board.
It's terrible.
LSU had the same struggles against Florida State, and I know Florida State's got a great pass rush, but they got after Jaden Daniels. So I don't know. I think a lot of shuffling around on offensive lines hasn't been great. Even this Florida team that we've got coming up, I'm curious to see what they do against Tennessee because against Utah they did not look good, and they had a hard time, couldn't get a run game going. I know that's not about a quarterback, but I don't know. I just think it's early. But so far, no one has jumped out as just like
as a wow.
phenomenal.
Yeah, as a wow.
I tell you, I watched the Kansas quarterback Friday night, Jaden Daniels.
Yes,
I watched him play.
Yeah,
and or Jalen Daniels.
Yeah, Jalen.
There's so many.
A lot of them.
I don't know. Whatever. I think it's Jalen Daniels. But anyway, he was so impressive. He was so fun to watch. They were playing Illinois.
Those uniforms were pretty awesome too, huh?
It is what it is. But yeah, with the black uniforms, and they were fun to watch. And I just look across the SEC, and I'm like, if you put that guy in the SEC, he'd be a star.
Go off.
He'd be a household name. He was the MVP of the conference last year, offensive player of the year in the Big 12.
He's special,
but so fun to watch. And I just don't see too many guys like that in the SEC that are, putting on a show like that. I think they're all, serviceable with question marks on their O lines.
Yeah.
We'll see. It may be a war of attrition this year in the SEC.
And it makes you wonder, like, all these SEC teams, looking for quarterbacks in the offseason didn't really take the transfer portal seriously, especially down, Florida. You had a chance to get Sam Hartman or Devin Leary, which Kentucky got him, and they ended up with Graham Mertz from Wisconsin, and we'll see how he does Saturday. But, Alabama waited till the 11th hour and got Tyler Buckner from Notre Dame, and, that's still an unanswered question.
And supposedly made a huge offer to the North Carolina quarterback who turned him down and ended up staying at North Carolina.
Drake May.
Yeah.
Drake May. Yeah.
I mean,
interesting. Yeah.
It makes you wonder.
Yeah, it does. It's a weird year for the SEC.
Well, that's another thing about this Heupel and Tennessee quarterback situation is that, he could have went out and grabbed somebody. So obviously he believes in Joe. He wanted Joe to have the job. He knew he had Nico there as a true freshman on the bench. And so, he had the opportunity just like everybody else. If he felt like he needed to go out and get a transfer quarterback, he could have or should have. I'm still rolling with him and trusting in him, but you know, if this year plays out and Joe's ends up not being the guy long term,
Yeah.
it's going to be a head scratcher. A lot of people are going to wonder why didn't he go out and grab somebody just as an option,
Yeah.
you know. And I guess it's kind of hard to get somebody to come in knowing that they're probably going to be the second string quarterback.
Right.
It's, you know, I don't mean to question them. I just you have to ask the questions whenever you see a performance like Saturday.
As we said, guys, I have doubts with Milton. I don't want to have doubts, but I do. It's just the reality of it. But at the end of the day, I trust Heupel. I do. So that's all we can do at this point. That's all we can do at this point. Hey, it's a great question, Barry. I appreciate that. All right, so we had a question from Terry. We had a question from Barry, and you guys wanted to know if we're going to have a question from Jerry or a Mary.
Is it Jerry? Is it Mary? It's Debbie,
You're
isn't it?
not going to believe this. You are not going to believe this. It is. Sorry, guys. This guy just had to ruin it. It's not a Jerry. It's not a Mary or whatever else that would rhyme with Terry and Barry. It's a Howie. I'm sorry, guys.
Oh, Howie.
Howie, why'd you do it? Why? All right. We still love you, Howie. Thanks for listening and tuning in and asking a question. So we've got Howie C. from, I know where this is, Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
Home of Big Ed's Pizza.
Big Ed's Pizza. Shout out to Big Ed's. We've all been there. Fantastic place.
I get to see Oak Ridge football team Friday night.
There you go, buddy. We'll have to report out and let us know how that game goes.
Mm-hmm.
Save a seat for Howie there.
There you go.
We will.
Howie. All right, Howie. So his question is, favorite Tennessee-Florida game moment from the past? Oh, God. I mean, I think you guys are going to know what mine is. I've shared this before with you guys and also with Vol Society in the past on the podcast. Let's see if you can guess. Does anyone know what my favorite Florida-Tennessee moment is? See how good you listen.
2004.
Morrison, you're a good listener, buddy. Absolutely. My freshman year at the University of Tennessee, 2004. Real quickly, I mean, if you're a Vol fan, you already know what I'm about to say, but it was at Neyland Stadium. Your boy James Will Hoyt redeemed himself after missing an extra point in the game, but he redeemed himself and made a 50-yard field goal to win the game. I'll never forget it. I was sitting 50-yard line at that game, and John Ward says, "The Tennessee Volunteers are victorious." What a game it was, guys. So that's me. That's my favorite moment. How about D's? What's your favorite moment, buddy?
God, man, it's hard to narrow it down to one. I think of Casey Clausen going down to the swamp and winning twice. He was the Gator killer.
Yeah, he was.
I think of even here recently, the Florida game in Knoxville after Tease Tabor had talked all that trash and Josh Dobbs went out and got the win there. And last year's game, we were at that game, and that was a lot of fun. Getting to see Hendon Hooker put on a show and kind of have his coming out party.
A ton of fun.
All those were great, but I would still say my number one would probably have to be 98.
Oh, God.
Just the defense's effort in that game, and Al Wilson and Deion Grant and those guys making plays. And
was that the no sir-ree?
That's
no
right.
sir-ree. Pandemonium reigns. Is that what that was?
That's what that was, and kind of felt a little bit like Alabama last year, just because we had struggled to beat Florida. Like Peyton never was able to beat them.
Yep.
No one thought that 97-98 team was going to be able to be the ones to do it, and it was a big deal. And I remember being I guess I would have been a teenager, 13 years old probably. And it was just a huge deal to finally be able to beat those guys and to see it and to do it in Neyland and the storm in the field and all that.
That
So
whole
it's hard to top
season
that one.
was a big deal. Oh, my goodness.
For
Was
sure.
it not?
For sure.
Oh, gosh. I hate to live in the past, but that was just the greatest year ever. I have to tell you, it was unreal. Oh, incredible.
Hard to top.
Yeah. What about you, Morrison?
Yeah, there's so many to choose from. Last year was so fun hanging with you guys, and just that whole day. Walked through game day. We went to Jimmy John's and ate lunch, and then went down to Neyland and just a fun game overall.
Don't forget the
Um,
tailgate that we had with
oh yeah, the Josh Dobbs. That was the same day.
we were invited by Josh Dobbs and his
Yeah, we
crew
were.
to the Vol Society was invited to
Yeah.
the official Josh Dobbs tailgate where they took care of us, fed us, drinks, the works, whatever we wanted. It was amazing. It was a great day, guys.
That was a lot of fun. You had 04, I remember that one. A lot of my Tennessee Florida memories is just like what I did throughout that day and just of course watching the game. Like I remember the 04 game, going to Hibbett Sports and buying a Brent Schaefer jersey because I thought he was the future, and then our that only lasted for a year, and then he went to Ole Miss, and then I
Yeah.
had to go get our buddy Eric Ainge's jersey at the bookstore. No, just kidding. That's a callback from the podcast last year.
That's funny.
And then I remember 03, the last time we went down to the swamp and we won. I was at Brian Riggins' house. I was a young teenager, and I think Brent Ramirez, yeah, he was there. Maybe Mikey was there too. I remember watching the game and us playing NCAA 2004, I believe, at that time. So just, I guess that's kind of a lot of my memories of that. Just, yeah, I remember the big moments and the big games, but just kind of the people that was around me at the time and, watching history and, even the 2001 game, we're recording on the 23rd, 22nd, 23rd year of 9/11. That Tennessee Florida game got postponed to December. And, we won down there, and I'm not trying to uh, make light of what today is remembered by, but just that was a big game, and that led us to the SEC championship that year.
Travis Stevens went off in the swamp.
Travis Stevens went off in the swamp. So that's kind of just off the top of my head, some of those big games.
It's awesome. That's great, man.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's awesome, man. Travis Stevens. God, what a guy.
And we've not won down there since 03. So coming up this week, you can say all you want about the Austin Peay game, but that's going to be all forgiven and forgotten if we can go down there and get a win this week. I don't care how we get it. You go down there and win.
What is that, 20 years?
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
20 years since we've won in Florida. Guys.
So we can be talking about benching Joe this week. If he goes down there and beats Florida Saturday, we'll be wanting to put a statue up of him.
Guys.
That's how it works.
Is that not crazy? We've been through some trials and tribulations.
Mm-hmm.
This is absurd. We must win this game Saturday. Josh Heupel, if you're listening to this, seriously, do what you have to do. Coach your butt off. We got to win this game 20 years. Think about that.
Enough is enough. It's time for a change.
That should blow your mind if you're listening to this. I'm serious. 20 years is a long time. Imagine going to prison for 20 years. That's a long time. You got me fired up, guys. We have to win this game Saturday at all cost. Period.
I mean, none of your kids have seen
No!
Florida win. Or Tennessee win at Florida.
20 years. God, unreal. We got to win that game. And you know what? That leads us to our last segment before we sign off for the night, guys. Let's go ahead and do it. Thoughts on the Florida game and score predictions. All right, guys. I'll tell you what. Before I answer this question, how about I share our Facebook Gator Hater joke of the day with you if you're listening? Let's get a little laugh out of you guys. Maybe you'll think it's funny. I don't know. Got a lot of hits though on Facebook today. I thought that was kind of cool. Here it goes, guys. Gator Hater, Vol Society Gator Hater joke of the day. What's the difference between a gator and a bucket of manure? This is where somebody would say, I don't know what.
What's that, Brad?
The bucket. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Here we go, guys. I'll be honest. A week ago, I would have said we win this game by 2 touchdowns. After this past Saturday, oh boy, you got me questioning things. I'm not so sure. In my opinion, 2 things have to happen Saturday in the swamp. First, we need to be able to stop their run game. Okay? And I think we have a good chance of doing that. I think we can stop the run game. Second, you already know where I'm going with this. Joe Milton has to be accurate and he has to make good decisions. He's allowed to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But this overthrown crap has got to be fixed or it's going to cost us this year. Anybody want to hear my, Morrison, you want to hear my prediction?
Go ahead.
I'm going to go with Gators 30. The Volunteers 34.
34-30.
You got it.
It's close.
It is close. Hey, do I think we're way better than Florida this year? Absolutely. But history will show you that these games in the swamp are always close. They're not easy, just the way it is. I hope we beat them by 4 touchdowns, and I'm wrong. We should. We're better than them. But history, Morrison, history. 34-30. The Vols somehow figure it out, and we end that, 20-year losing streak in the swamp. What do you got, Morrison?
Yeah, I think this is, like you said, kind of second guessing what I originally was going to say, even last week. I hadn't really watched too much of Florida's game with McNeese, but you're not going to get much out of that. I totally agree. You're going to have to stop their running backs. You're going to have to stop Montrell Johnson, Trevor Etienne. Ricky Pearsall's doing a pretty good job as far as wide receiver goes, and he really burned us last year in Knoxville. You're going to have to find a way to stop him. I do like how Kamal Haddon played last week against Austin Peay, so be a good little matchup there. Graham Mertz, what Graham Mertz you're going to see. Is he going to be decent and solid for them, or are you going to see the Graham Mertz against Utah? But I'll say this. I think it's going to be probably somewhat of a low-scoring game. I think it's going to be a physical. Saturday night's all right for fighting, so I think it's going to be a football fist fight, if you will. I'll go Tennessee 28, Florida 24.
So another close one.
Another close one. I think it's going to be kind of low scoring. I know it's not a Josh Heupel high scoring affair, But I just think, going down the swamp, crazy things have happened. And like I said, this is Joe Milton's first true road game. Even when he was at Michigan, that was during the COVID year, and there was no fans at Big Ten games. So this is the first true road game of his career in college
Let
football.
me tell you this right now. And if I'm wrong, hey, please leave a message on Vol Society. Uh, make fun of me. I don't care. This game Saturday, even though we're known for putting up points, man, it ain't going to be no 50, 60. There ain't going to be no 50, 60 plus points in this game, guys. Ain't going to happen. History, Morrison, as I said, history shows that this is always a tough game. So we lost, for our listening fans, we lost David Dees for just a moment. He's now back with us. I don't think he got to hear my score prediction, so I'm going to, David, since you're back, welcome back. I think he had an internet issue there. But Dees, I wanted to share, you heard Morrison's. I wanted to share my prediction real quick with you. 34-30 Vols. So a close one. And now, David Dees, it's time for you. Let's hear your thoughts, and let's hear that prediction, buddy.
I just think it's going to be a weird game. I think it's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be a dogfight. I would have predicted a lot higher score a couple weeks ago after the Virginia game. After the Virginia game, I would have said Tennessee 45, Florida 20 or something like that. Definitely not thinking that coming off the heels of this last game. I'm going to go Tennessee. I'm going to go Tennessee 31, Florida 23.
Wow.
I think Tennessee's going to win the game. I think they're the better football team.
Oh, no question.
If they get solid, competent quarterback play, and I know it's a big if.
Amen.
I just still think, even if Joe Milton can play the way he did against Virginia, and the receivers play the way they did,
I think our defense is going to save us.
Tennessee's going to win.
I think our defense.
I think our defense is going to do well. I think our special teams will make plays. I think Josh Heupel's a great football coach, and I think he's going to figure out a way to get us over the top here. I just think Florida is not very good. Maybe I'll be completely wrong. I think they're slow on defense. I think that their quarterback play is not going to be that great. I think their offensive line is not very good. It's going to be a dogfight just because of who it is and where both these teams are at this point. But I just think Tennessee is going to find a way to get the win. Maybe that's just me being an eternal optimist, but
no.
If not, we'll see, guys. We'll definitely have a lot to say about it one way or the other.
All right, there you go. It's been another great show. It's a great week, a big week. We got to do what we got to do, guys, to get this win. 20 years. That should blow your freaking mind.
I'm going to paint a picture for you real quick.
Paint it.
Travis Stevens, that game in 2003. If you'll humor me here, I'm going to Google this. How many yards did he have in touchdowns? Or was that 01 or 03?
Who?
01 was the breakout game.
Yeah, Travis Henry?
Okay. Yeah, Travis Stevens.
Yeah, Stevens. Yeah.
03 was like Jabari Davis and
right.
those guys at the time. Joe Riggs. So 01 was Stevens.
Yeah.
Well, I apologize. He had 226 yards and 2 touchdowns on 19 carries.
Jeez.
And that was December 2nd, 2001.
Yeah.
I think this Tennessee team and part of their path to victory, it may not be just one guy. It may be a combination of the 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But I could see Jalen Wright running for 150 yards. I could see Jabari Small rushing for 50 yards. I could see Dylan Sampson getting a handful of yards. And I think that's a very likely scenario.
Well, we have a victory. We have a victory if we go down there and we can run the ball like you're saying we're going to, David. We have a victory. Here, I really believe that.
I think that's one path.
Oh, yeah, that's a path.
I think that's one path, and I could see that happening. I think these running backs are going to run with purpose. And,
well, hey, and you look at Florida's defense, guys. They're down. They're down. Hey, I think I heard this today. Let's see. They had 0 sacks against Utah. 0. And they only had 2 last week against who they played, Morrison?
McNeese State.
Whoever that is. That should tell you everything you need to know.
Louisiana.
That should tell you everything you need to know. Only 2. So they're down, guys. We're a better team than this Gator team. We should win.
Yeah. Let's go down there and take care of business. We'll celebrate.
Let's do it.
Be on here next week with a much more positive podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, hey, that's gonna do it for us tonight. Be sure to join David Morrison this Tuesday night. Tuesday night, 8 p.m. on our Facebook page, Vol Society, for Vol Society Live. Morrison does a great job with that show. He does it every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. live. That's your time to shine. You get on there live, ask your questions, leave your comments. You're going to be heard. Let's put it that way. Morrison will give you a shout out. He'll read your question. I mean, you will be heard. That's the whole point of All Society. We want to hear from you. So get on there and join us tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. David Morrison. We had another awesome turnout last week during the live show. Many fans asking questions. We appreciate you guys. It's going to do it from us. Guys, from all of us here at good old Rocky Talk, I say good night and go Vols.
Beat the Gators.